Salem-Keizer School Board. We're sure happy to have you. We realize it's a little smoky out there and pretty warm, so you really deserve a vote for enduring both those and coming. We do appreciate it. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll quickly take attendance of board members. Mr. Lippold, Director Lippold, will be here, but he'll be late. He's driving from a place fairly far away, but he'll be here. And Chuck will not be here. Chuck Lee. Paul?
Yes, I'm here.
Sharon? Yes. Marty?
Here.
Jim?
Here.
Thank you. There are no agenda modifications today, unless anyone has one. None noted. Spotlights.
All right.
Our superintendent, Christy Perry, will do that.
All right, our first spotlight will be presented by Chief Operating Officer Mike Wolf.
Good evening. I'd like Keith McClung, our Financial Services Manager, to come up. He's representing his entire team who could not be here. But in May,
Right here.
Salem, over there. Sorry, Keith. First you come up here if you'd like to. It's a friendly podium. In May, Salem-Keizer Public Schools was awarded the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting presented by the Association of School Business Officials International. The Certificate of Excellence recognizes districts that have met the organization's high standards for financial reporting and accountability. Salem-Keizer earned their certificate. Well, that was quick. Usually we keep them up there.
Stand here and talk
Make
about it.
them stay in front of everybody for the whole thing, but that's okay. No, you stay where you're at. We're good. Salem-Keizer earned their Certificate of Excellence for its Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or the CAFR, ending fiscal year 2017. The CAFR informs parents and other stakeholders about the financial and economic state of the district, making it an important communication tool for building trust and engaging with the Salem-Keizer community. The Certificate of Excellence demonstrates transparency and credibility, improves financial reporting through comments from school financial professionals, and is viewed by credit rating agencies as a positive factor in decision-making. The most recent example of this is when we just recently went out into the bond market for our first issuance of the 2018 general obligation bond, which helped us immensely. This is the 32nd consecutive year that Salem-Keizer Public Schools has been awarded the Certificate of Excellence for Financial Reporting, and I think that's worth saying again. The 31st consecutive, but we'll get it next year. And while that makes it sound like it's fairly routine, that long track record of excellence is exceptional. So we certainly want to thank Keith and his entire team for the work that they do and will continue to do. And we'll see you here next year.
All right, the next spotlight will be presented by Matt Biondi, the Director of Middle Schools.
Good evening, everyone. If I could have Principal Jenny Madeline, Teacher Audrey Molesky, and all the students from Stevens who may be here tonight to come up front, that would be great. Look at all of them. Excellent. These are all staff and students from Stevens Middle School, 30 students in Teacher Audrey Von Volosky's Project Citizen elective class at Adam Stevens Middle School recently won top honors in the state and in the nation for a comprehensive civics project they worked on last spring. The students' award-winning project is called Is This America? Safer Schools to End Gun Violence. The 7th and 8th graders conducted original research, selected their own topic, and determined recommendations to make schools safer. The students led interviews with multiple experts in the fields of education, security, mental health, and law enforcement. At the state competition, Stevens students gave presentations in front of an expert panel, which included an extended question and answer period that was totally unscripted. Their presentation panels, which are informative posters, were also evaluated along with a binder that documented all the research and ideas they developed. After winning the state competition, the students' work was selected to represent Oregon at the National Project Citizen Showcase. Only first-place winners competed in the national showcase last month. Although they were not able to attend the national competition in California in person, students submitted their presentation panels and portfolio binder for judging. Stevens was one of 4 schools from across the nation ranked as superior, the top award. Winning at the state and national levels is exciting, but teacher Audrey Von Malusky says the true value of Project Citizen elective classes is in empowering students by promoting active participation in discussion and the practice of democratic and civic values. Congratulations to Stevens students and their teacher on your successful project and for being recognized at the state and national level for the quality of your work. Congratulations.
All right, and then this is a different type of spotlight. We're going to have Olga Cobb, our director, one of our directors of elementary, introduce our new principals for this year. So Olga, welcome to the podium for the first time.
Thank you. Thank you. Tonight is my pleasure to introduce 4 new elementary school principals to the school board in our community. They are Brian Turner, Magda Romero, Bridget West, and Dr. Jessie Payne. Brian Turner is the new principal at Candelaria Elementary. He has worked as a special education teacher, a high school baseball coach, an athletic director, and teacher recruiter. He began his career in education in 2008 and has spent the majority of his career working in urban Title I schools, specializing in students with emotional and behavioral needs. Last year, he worked as an assistant principal at Swiggle Elementary. Magda Romero is the new principal at Cummings Elementary. She has worked in education for more than 20 years and is most recently served as an assistant principal at Keizer Elementary and Chavez Elementary. In addition to serving as an assistant principal, Principal Romero also served as an office manager, instructional assistant, and classroom teacher. She believes in building a strong community within the school and is committed to helping each child succeed every day. Bridget West is a new principal at Hoover Elementary. She has worked in Salem-Keizer public schools her entire career, beginning at Hellman Elementary. Throughout her time with Salem-Keizer, she has worked as a classroom teacher, an instructional coach, and most recently as the assistant principal at Richmond Elementary. Dr. Jessie Payne is the new principal at Valley Inquiry Charter School. He will continue working part-time at Corban University while serving as principal at Valley Inquiry. Dr. Payne has served as an elementary school teacher, high school teacher, paraprofessional, university professor, higher education administrator, and human resources director. He has a passion for advocating for underrepresented students, mental health initiatives, social justice, equity, and effective leadership practice. Please join us in welcoming these new amazing principals to our team.
Next, we'll move on to public comment. And last 2 weeks ago, when it was my first time, I opened up public comment, and I said, let's get rid of the buzzer or the red light or what have you. But it frankly didn't work out too well. People just insisted on going a little farther. So I finally agreed with my friends up here to go as far as the yellow light. And when you do see a yellow light right here, that means that you'll try and wrap it up. I mean, don't quit halfway through a sentence, but finish the way you're thinking, and that's it. So, the first person tonight, oh, there is a change too. All you have to do is give your name and city of residence. So you don't have to go through your name and address and the things we'd had before. Let's see, first on the list is Mindy Merritt.
Good evening. Thank you very much. And Chair Goss, I do have a favor. I have a member who has signed up after me who is going to be yielding their time to me. So would you like to call that member now to yield their time? Or would you like to call upon them at the 3-minute mark?
I kind of hate to set that precedence of doing that. Are both your comments and are your extra time comments on the same thing?
Yes, they are.
Well, let's stick to you and to her. Does
Okay.
that work?
And so she'll yield her time to me when she's called. So we'll do 3 minutes and then, okay, very good.
No, I meant that you and then she could speak.
And then she'll yield her time at that point, because that is one of the policies of the school board.
Have we done that before?
I don't know if we,
I'm not aware that it's ever been done. Robert's rules, we did it last year.
All right. Against my better judgment, I'll do that this time, and we'll have a chance to look it up and see how we do that. So, do you wish her to start first, or?
She won't be
You.
speaking, she'll be yielding her time. So would you like to have that time yielded now, or would you like?
That's least disruptive, so let's have her yield. Is she here this evening?
She is.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, School Board Chair Goss, Vice Chair Blasi, Superintendent Perry, and members of the board. My name is Mindy Merritt, and I reside in the city of Salem. Tonight, I am here to speak to you as president of Salem-Keizer Education Association. Each month, I reflect upon the executive limitations and the systems within our school district. I would like to express my concern for the way in which the policy governance executive limitations model is currently being used as the evaluation tool between the school board and our district superintendent. I say this because it is also within these reviews that this important district systems, policies, cultures, and practices are reviewed, which are all things that the superintendent is held accountable for. Yet, as I stand here each month in front of you, addressing the executive limitations, we're really looking at an overall system. We're really addressing the framework of our district. We're really looking at how is our district functioning. It is a reflection upon the district and the need to be a part of a healthy dialogue for the collaborative problem solving to ensure that our students are getting what they need. As the president of the Salem-Keizer Education Association, I feel I must address regarding executive limitations in general. It feels to me sometimes, and it could be the first grade teacher in me, that I'm almost picking on Superintendent Perry. And that's by no means what my intention is. What I'm trying to do is have that healthy dialogue. Some of us are here tonight as servant leaders, elected leaders, employees, parents, and community leaders. Nevertheless, we are here, and each and every one of us are invested. We are invested in our over 42,000 Salem-Keizer students, of which over 39%, which I believe is a little higher, identify as Latinx, 5% as multi-ethnic, 2% as Asian, 2% as Pacific Islander, 1% as African American, 1% as Native, and 50% as white. We serve the largest population of students of migrant families within the state of Oregon. 16% of our students receive special education services. Altogether, Superintendent Perry is responsible for creating a plan to oversee the almost 5,000 employees in the second largest district in the state. That is a big job. My concern with the policy governance of executive limitations model within the school board uses the evaluation tool for the district superintendent is the concern that it removes the opportunity for open lines of communication, for transparent communication, for vulnerability, and for what we call within our own classrooms a growth mindset. You as elected officials make big decisions that impact our classrooms, our community, our students. And if you're not sure of what's happening in our classrooms, how can you make those decisions? To ensure that all students are receiving a school experience that is equitable, to ensure that every student feels safe, and that every one of our students is receiving a full opportunities regardless of the location within our district where they attend school, we need to make sure that we have healthy dialogue. Even if there's discourse, that's okay. How do we ensure that's happening if we don't have open lines of communication? As I've said before, for all students to succeed, we all will need to look beyond our differences and find ways in which we are bringing everyone's voice to the table. So that brought to my recollection of being a veteran teacher, or seasoned as I like to call it, sounds a little spicier, that in 1995, I believe, there was a state statute that came forward, and that was the site councils. And they just revised 2017, the Oregon ORS 329.704, local 21st century schools councils. And Alice, I have these. I have included the district site council committee. So this is the law that states, which is a law of every school site needs to have, individual school needs to have their own site council. It actually has the parameters in which the site council needs to be elected. It's not appointed by the principal. It needs to actually have, it serves specific duties. It needs to be, not more than half of the members shall be teachers, not more than half of the members shall be parents of students attending the school, classified employees. One member shall be the principal. In addition, we shall have business leaders, students, and members of the community at large. We have, within the packet you just received, the QAM, Site Council School-Based, ADM-A008, which specifically states, in accordance with Oregon Revised Statutes, the purpose of the Site Council to improve student academic achievement at the school site. This is definitely to align with the district vision, mission, and policies. Again, this is to align with the strategic plan in which every school building makes their own site council plan to ensure students are succeeding. I also included Comprehensive School Improvement Plan, INS-P004, which specifically shares this procedure provides details on developing and implementing a comprehensive school improvement plan. It talks about what it looks like for the school leadership team and the school as a whole. To my recollection, I do not know of one, maybe one, of the 65 schools. I also included the demographics of our district that has a site council team, and I'm asking you as a board to inquire, that is functioning under our current statutes, state statutes, by electing
Mandy, can you try and wrap?
educators, members, support staff, as well as community members. If we have active site councils, that will certainly solve and most certainly wrap up and make sure our EL3 is covered. That would include community and
Okay.
students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mindy. Kelsey Dunlop.
My name is Kelsey Dunlap of Salem. I apologize that I don't have hard copies of what I'm going to read to you today. My printer at home malfunctioned, so I'm also reading off my phone. I'm speaking today as the chair of the Salem-Keizer Education Association's Human and Civil Rights Committee and as a parent. I'm also a Salem-Keizer employee, and I must acknowledge that I may be putting myself at risk for retaliation from administrators with my statement today. Regarding Agenda Item 9A, Superintendent's Executive Limitation 3, Relationship with Students, Parents, and Community, specifically regarding Items 7 through 11, which address maintaining an organizational culture that treats all stakeholders with respect, dignity, and courtesy, involving them in an advisory capacity on important issues which impact them directly, providing timely notice to parents and students about decisions that affect them, taking reasonable steps to inform stakeholders of policies that affect them, and involving stakeholders when key policies are developed. Today's board agenda reflects that there is no evidence of non-compliance with these charges. On July 24th, however, the district brought forth a recommendation to authorize Salem-Keizer Public Schools as a law enforcement agency. This action demonstrates a lack of compliance with all of the charges mentioned previously. According to an article published in the Statesman Journal on July 27th, the district had expressed interest in the law enforcement agency designation in fall 2017. District administration has had nearly a year to discuss this enormous decision and involve stakeholders in an advisory capacity, and they chose instead to develop its resolution among themselves without any input from the community or any warning that such policy was even being considered. It was then brought forward in July to be potentially voted on in August, months in which community participation is likely to be at its lowest. In the August 9th Community Advocacy and Partnership Engagement meeting, John Van Driel, Director of Safety and Risk Management, fully admitted that an equity lens was not considered in the development of this resolution. He said that the district's process is evolving, not necessarily using specific questions, but using a perspective of equity and how different groups of diverse backgrounds will be affected. The resolution did not go through this process, and that was a mistake, according to John Van Driel. This recommendation was not a mistake. It was a glaring error. The hubris implicated in bringing such a policy forward in the first place is absolutely breathtaking. Our communities of color and immigrant communities are still reeling from this recommendation's impact. The evidence of compliance includes the superintendent's decision to rescind the recommendation to authorize SKPS as a law enforcement agency, and I thank the superintendent for that decision. And I absolutely trust that she will take this opportunity to examine the organizational culture that allowed this resolution to reach the school board. However, this recommendation should have never gotten this far without community input, and the superintendent should be held accountable for that decision. Her job is far too important to our educators, our families, and most importantly, our children to let this slip by without comment. I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Kelsey. I believe that takes care of those people that have signed up to speak on items, on agenda items. Is there anyone we've missed? Well, thank you very much, and I appreciate you confining your comments to a particular 3 minutes. Thank you. Moving on, we have several action items tonight. Our superintendent.
All right, the first action item is to adopt resolution number 201819-1, and Chief Operations Officer Mike Wolf will present this to you before you take action.
Good evening, Chair Goss, Superintendent Perry, and members of the board. So tonight you have in front of you the resolution that authorizes the acceptance of the $8 million grant from the Oregon Department of Transportation, which is actually, I'm sorry, that was my old previous life, Oregon Department of Education. It's the awesome grant, the Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Program. And we were lucky enough to receive the maximum amount of $8 million prior to the May election. And then since then, we've been working with our legal counsel, bond counsel, to provide all of the documentation necessary to enter into the grant agreement. It's actually it's a state of Oregon grant agreement because the state is issuing bonds in support of this program. And so what you have in front of you is the actual template for the agreement and the resolution that's necessary for us to enter into that agreement with Oregon Department of Education. And so the recommendation of staff is that you adopt the resolution, which authorizes the superintendent and/or her designee, which would be me in this case, to sign all necessary documents to complete the transaction.
Do we have a motion?
Sure. I move that we adopt resolution number 201819-1.
Thank you.
Second?
Is there a second? Marty, thank you. Let's move that to a vote. All those in favor?
No discussion?
Oh, is there discussion? I'm sorry. Any discussion from the board? None. None. Thank you. Let's call for a vote then. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion passes, and thank you. And thank you for being patient with me as well. Okay, we have a little different consent calendar. And we have covered those items.
You have, we still have the personnel action.
Oh, in your packet, you will find a list of the personnel decisions that the board or the superintendent has agreed with. Questions?
Yeah, this says 7B. Is there a 7A? Or is this it?
Yeah, there is no grants tonight.
Yeah.
There's just 7B tonight.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So personnel actions, any comments, any discussions?
I'd move adoption of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor signify by nay. There are none, so personnel actions have been adopted. There are no readings on the agenda, but Superintendent, will you go through, please, the reports this evening?
All right, we'll start with executive limitation number 3. This is the relationship with students, parents, and community. And I will just give you a couple highlights. The first item is there's a number of policies that have been changed. Last time you asked for copies of the policies. We don't have those in bold and strike through for this, so it's hard to see what has changed. And the policies and things that are referenced are about this thick. So my question to you is, do you want me to send everything here as a PDF, or do you just want to ask for specific policies when they've been changed that you have an interest in? I'm okay either way, I just don't want to inundate you with paper or things in your email.
Any comments?
I would personally like to see the whole thing just because I want to learn it. But I realize that there's a lot of paperwork, so
We'll just PDF it and attach it.
sure.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'd like it too, so if I have a question, then I don't have to, wait maybe till Monday, I can just go look in my email account and find it.
Perfect.
Okay.
And next time, we'll try to get those ahead of the board meeting. We just got caught on timing this time.
That's okay.
So we'll send it out with the board packet, separate attachment.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. Any, Mr. Green, would you like those too?
Sure.
We'll just send them to
Send them out as a board packet, that's fine.
Okay.
All right, and then in the report itself, bullets, I just want to highlight number 3, the bullet number 3. I'm trying to highlight the things that are new. The Student Equity Committee and the District Equity Committee last year, and the work of the equity policy. So those were new last year. A little further down the page, the district has outlined a boundary realignment process and is using the equity lens to guide that work. The next bullet is that response to our concerns from our community around the law enforcement agency. And then close to the third one from the bottom, this is a special ed work groups, which is a key piece of our work on the strategic plan, but really has used a really good model for engaging our stakeholders. And then one thing, just that Office of Equity Access and Advancement, I don't know if you remember that a year and a half ago or so we did not have that office. And we are really attending last year to our African American students who are not at risk at graduating. When you look down to the pending executive limitations information, we are really looking at the how do we engage around the general obligation bond and that process. So you'll have next week an outline for what would an oversight committee look like. And then one of the things it highlighted for us, the law enforcement agency, is that we have an equity policy and you have an equity lens. And we really need to bring the questions of the equity lens into our policy and into our procedures. So we're going to pull those together in some either in a work instruction or something. We're still fiddling with where they best belong. So when that comes forward, and is finished, I'll report back to you on a future executive limitation. And then, let's see, I'm sorry, that was number 2. And then we are kicking off a year-long attendance initiative, Everyday 24J, to combat chronic absenteeism. You'll hear a report on that. And then our Student Office of Equity is adding a focus on our Pacific Islander group, which is another demographic that are really at risk for not graduating and have a lower graduation rate and higher dropout rate than our other subgroups. So that's our report. Always tons more that I could tell you about. So I'll open it up for questions.
Questions? I assume that means that we all are acknowledging that and will urge them to move forward on a consent.
No, but it's not what that means, as I understand what you're saying. We need to go for consensus, and I don't agree with the report, so there's one dissenting vote.
Okay, let's show that. Yes?
Can we, do we have opportunity for discussion, or?
Sure.
I don't have a question, but I do have, I appreciate the public comment and the acknowledgement of, we've acknowledged a misstep recently, and I think it was an incredibly unfortunate learning experience for us, but I think it did highlight an area for improvement, and I appreciate that continued focus and that we are looking at how we're taking a much more careful look at how decisions are made before they even come to the board. I know that the board has tried to be mindful over the last year and a half since the equity lens, but I really do appreciate that the district and district staff are acknowledging that we suffered a bit of a misstep there, and how do we regroup. But I think that that's something for us to look at collectively, and I appreciate that you're bringing it forward as an effort for district staff, district leadership, and then also the board. So I do appreciate that.
Thank you. Jesse?
Sure. I just wanted to say that looking throughout the past year, I mean, a lot of this, when I'm looking at it, I'm like, wow, you've done a really good job at all these things. With regard to the law enforcement agency, however, I mean, there was a failure to provide timely notice to parents and students about decisions that would affect them. And so, I mean, I guess we didn't implement a policy without them, but it was kind of brought forth without a set meeting date until we voted on it. And so there's that one. There's a few others which, if we're looking at just that situation, I would say weren't right on the tee. I completely understand it was it wasn't on purpose. You weren't intentionally saying, hey, we're not going to listen to you guys. But I did want to take note and acknowledge the fact that there were some of these things in that process that weren't done. It's just whether or not we can accept it and move on. It's a different story. But anyways, thank you.
Okay. Let's express our opinions. Thumbs up, in the middle, or thumbs down. I see 1, 2, 3. Let me go. 1, Jim?
Yep.
1 up, 2 up, 3 up. And I see negative comments by Paul and Jesse. And 1 middle comment by Marty. And I thank you for that, and we'll take a reading of that.
Madam Chair, could I comment on that? I mean, if we have board members who have concerns about executive limitation, that's the opportunity when we evaluate our superintendent to make mention of that. So if we have board members who have concerns, like Jesse did, that's our opportunity when we evaluate Christie, when that evaluation comes out, to bring that issue up. And then if there's been corrective action, so that if other issues come up like that, it's a learning process to do that. I want to make sure the public understands it's not just vote up, down, sideways by the board, but this is what we evaluate the superintendent on.
And what we're saying is that we either accept that as is, and we think it's right, or it may need more work for the middle, or for those that don't, we will be happy to meet with them and see what we can do that might develop consensus among all board members. And I hope you did understand what Mr. Green said. Any of these executive limitations mean just that. And we've had some already, and we'll have more coming each time. The major role of a school board is to evaluate the superintendent. That's the reason we exist in our contracts. So we have to have some criteria to evaluate the superintendent, and that's what these limitations are. So the one that we had where we did make a misstep, that's one thing, and we'll address that when we evaluate the superintendent. We'll also evaluate what we thought was a good decision by pulling that back. And since we did that, that's not a negative for the superintendent, it's actually a positive, because we all make errors of judgment or what have you on occasion. So that's what this is about. Moving on.
All right, our next report is going to be by Stephanie Wetzel, our Head Start preschool program. And this is her annual report. So I did ask her to come to the podium tonight to quickly give that.
So good evening, Chair Goss, Superintendent Perry, and members of the board. I thank you for inviting me to come and just talk a little bit about our program. As Superintendent Perry mentioned, this is an annual requirement with our Head Start grant that we share information with our members of the board related to our program. We had to put together just a few slides just to talk about our early childhood programs in general. As you know, we have multiple programs, not just specifically Head Start. We serve just under 1,000 students, ages 3 to 5. So you should have that where it lists all of our programs and funding streams and age requirements and what those look like. So that's taking a look at all of the programs in general. The next slide will look at the data specific to Head Start. So we do student assessments, looking at the different outcome areas, looking at the different developmental domains for child development, and students are showing great gains, right? So students who are enrolled in our program, specifically students who are also enrolled for 2 years in our program, are showing higher outcomes when you look across the board. We just wanted to do a couple of highlights. Our program is working the past 2 years with a focus on equity. So we have been looking at equity self-assessment, working with staff trainings, working with John Lenson and his team. We've also partnered with our Office of Equity here in our school district, and with Cynthia has come in to do some staff trainings around equity. We have a equity committee specific to our early childhood programs, working on parent surveys around the environment and parent satisfaction there. And we're also continuing this work as we move forward. So it's just becoming part of what we do and into our works plan. We also, you'll hear more about the attendance, we also have a focus around attendance and chronic absenteeism, specifically with our preschool students and families, because we know if we can start the habits now with parents understanding about getting kids to school and establishing good routines, that those will carry on for K-12. So we've been working on building parent engagement, positive parent education around the importance of attendance, getting students to school, and the impact of consistent attendance on student achievement. This year, we're going to continue with our strategies around attendance and also work with our attendance initiative for Salem-Keizer. That was just a little bit of a quick highlight, and you also have the information that was presented for you. And then if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you. And for those watching, you received a packet or a Salem Head Start packet in your materials that you picked up on the table. And it has anything else I think you might be interested in.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. All right, our next report, you had a request from the Budget Committee process for more information on data teams. And so we're going to start with Missy Thurman from Ed Excellence tonight to do a presentation on data teams. If, as a board, after she presents, you would like additional information, we can always do a second follow-up. You can direct that to board leadership and they can decide. So Missy, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here, Superintendent Perry and Chairperson Goss and board members. I really appreciate it. This is an honor for me that I don't often get. I spend all of my days sort of running up and down the I-5 corridor, training data teams and administrators and teachers, but I rarely get to see board members, so this is very cool for me, so thank you. I appreciate it. So I have a handout for you. You're welcome to use it if you want to. If it's helpful for you to take notes, that's great. If it's not, feel free to set it aside. It will match the PowerPoint that I'm going to share. So you'll have that to reference if you need it later. So I just want to start off and tell you a little bit about our team, Educational Excellence. So we started out as the Oregon Data Project many moons ago. About 10 years ago, there was a federal grant. And we did training all over the state, for about 10 years. And when that grant came to a close, people said, well, we still need help. And we all said, that's awesome, but we have jobs in our home districts and we had to go home. So that is where Educational Excellence came from. The group that was the Oregon Data Project doing training pulled together and we sort of triaged and said, who's geographically close enough that we can get to the people who still want to do the work? And we pulled ourselves together to become that team. All of the resources on our website are open source. Everything that we do, every training, every PowerPoint, every resource, we want it to get into the hands of as many people possible because our belief is that's what's best for kids. And so everything is posted, including all of the training that we do in Salem. So you're welcome to click into the training tab and you can see all the things that we've been doing here over the past few years. Obviously not internal documents like assessments, but any training materials that we have created ourselves. So feel free to click around in there. So I want to start off with the challenge we face. I've heard this word already a number of times today, and this idea that we want to work towards equity. And I know a number of people have seen this image before, and we all like the idea. But the truth is, it's not really happening in most districts around the state. People are doing the best they can. They're having hard conversations, but they're not really at a place where we are achieving equity. What we are more likely achieving is equality. We are seeing people put into place a system where all of the kids have the same thing, that we're realizing that there is a lack of access for some students, and we're like, hey, the first step is to make sure at least it's the same for everyone, right? But of course, giving everyone the same doesn't necessarily mean that we are meeting their needs. So one of the things that you guys are doing as a district that we have come alongside to help you with in order to figure out how to actually achieve an equitable situation for students is data teams. And I know that you guys have probably heard some things about data teams, but I'm gonna give you the fast and furious version so you kind of have a gist of how we make those boxes happen. Because they look real simple, but they're real hard. So here is Data Teams 101. So the first step of data teams is to plan and prepare instruction. This is a massive step. It takes teachers 4 to 6 hours, and your district has done a great job of putting things in place to shorten the amount of time. But it's basically where they say, what are the standards that kids need to achieve? What do we need to do to get there? What are the assessments we're gonna use to know if we do? And those are all the kind of background pieces before we go out. There's no data involved at this point. We're just having conversations about the standards and what kids need. Then we go out and we give an assessment. And when I say we, I mean teachers. I am a teacher in my heart of hearts. So teachers go out and they give an assessment, they bring that information back, and they organize and chart it into 4 columns. And the goal of that is to reveal student need, because we don't want to be looking at all the kids as a bulk, because they don't all have the same needs. So we're looking at kids and we're saying, here's the kids who are there, they've got it or they're exceeding, here's the kids who are close, here's the kids who are far to go likely, and here's the kids who are keeping me awake at night. I'm laying in my bed wondering, what am I going to do to meet their needs, right? And so we're parsing out those groups. Then the teacher teams are selecting an individual group of students, and they're saying, this is the group of students that our plan is not meeting the needs of. They're not getting the box, right? And so they're pulling those kids' assessments, their tests out, they're setting the other ones aside because there's a plan for those kids that's working, and they're saying, what are we gonna do for these other guys? Our plan is not working for them. So they start looking at the student work and they say, what are kids getting right? What are they getting wrong? What are those strengths that we can leverage, and what are those errors and misconceptions that we need to teach to? And as a teacher team, they pick something to focus on, and they say, this is the next small step, the next piece that we need for kids, and we make a plan around that. So the teachers then say, all right, this is the area that we're gonna focus on for this group of students, and they brainstorm strategies. What are all the different things we can do? What are the things we haven't tried yet to help these kids get this piece of information? Step 5 is super jargony, results indicators. There's a really terrible story that goes with it that someone will probably tell you at some point about how I'm a terrible cook. But the gist is, knowing results indicators is about knowing what are the exact things that are gonna happen in the classroom. What am I going to do as a teacher? What am I gonna expect kids to be doing to engaging with it? And what am I gonna see in their work or hear them saying that's gonna tell me my strategy is successful? It's sort of laying out all the nuts and bolts of the plan so that we're not leaving with just an idea. It's teachers really collaborating around how to execute the strategy well. Then they set a theory of action, which is basically, if we do the things that we just discussed, a percentage of our students will achieve at a higher level. And finally, and you'll notice it's the last step, but it all floats around the outside, is that reflect, monitor, and evaluate. That's where they're going through and saying, is the plan working? Are the kids' needs being met? Do we need to revise the plan? How's it going? And giving themselves the space to actually pause. Because we don't actually learn from experience, we learn from reflecting on experience. And we have to give teachers time to pause and do that. Otherwise, the speed of the work that we do, it just keeps going along, and we have to repeat because we don't have time to adjust. So the reflection piece is an important part of the process. So, guaranteed and viable curriculum. You may have heard this word before. Marzano, who is an education researcher back in 2003, did some research and said, basically, guaranteed and viable curriculum, if districts had it, if schools had it, it would be the number one thing that made a difference. The problem is it is entirely elusive to school districts to get both. Most districts have one but not the other. Some have a guarantee. They've bought a program that is basically a scripted program. They turn the page, teachers read it, you keep going, right? It's not a real fun life to live, but you are guaranteeing it because every student is hearing what that teacher is saying and they're covering it at the same pace. The problem is it's not viable. Doesn't fit in the school year that we have. It doesn't necessarily meet the needs of diverse learners, right? So it's guaranteed, you got it, but it doesn't necessarily work. On the flip side, other districts have given a lot of local control and said, teachers, we know it doesn't fit. You guys figure it out. You guys make it viable. And individual teachers and classrooms are saying, okay, I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to put this in, right? They're doing those pieces. And then what happens is teachers know how to make a good plan. That's like our strong suit. It's kind of our jam. So teachers can make a plan that is very viable, but it is no longer guaranteed. And now from classroom to classroom and school to school, you have the educational lottery where I get this teacher, I get that teacher, and I have a wildly different experience. So the challenge is, how do you bring those worlds together? And the question generally is, didn't we buy something? We could buy an adopted curriculum, or we did just buy a curriculum, so I think we have it now. And I want to pause there for just a second, because I want to explain the 51%. So 51% is the minimum number of standards that must be in a curriculum in the state of Oregon for it to be adoptable. It's kind of a mouthful, so I'm going to do it one more time. So 51% is the number of standards that must be in materials for it to be on the approved list, adoptable in the state of Oregon. Which in your mind, you're like, wait, that means 49% could be missing. And that's true. Obviously, every publisher is scrambling in the Common Core era to adjust and revise and get to as high of a number as they can because that's how they make money. They sell those products. But the truth is that's where they're starting. That's the lowest expectation. And so it's up to teachers and teams to have the discussion of what do we have, what do we not have, and whose needs are being met by what we have. Because it's not meeting the needs of all the learners. Even if it was 100% of the kids are not the same. So even when you buy curriculum that's high quality, it takes time. And I just want to briefly touch on the two curriculums that you have at the elementary level that I work with primarily. One of them is ReadyGen for ELA. ReadyGen is a retread. So that means it is a curriculum that was written before Common Core era that was revised. So they had an existing material that was hitting that number based on Oregon State standards. They revised it to match Common Core. That means it's going to have extra stuff in it that's no longer applicable. It also may be missing some things. So your data teams have been working really hard to try to get that number higher consistently over the last couple of years. Giving them ReadyGen was a fantastic move because before that, you largely had the situation I talked about before where every individual teacher was picking and pulling and finding. And for young teachers, that's an insurmountable battle. They just don't have the toolkit to start with, right? So giving them a toolkit is important, but it's not a fix-all. It's still going to need engagement by teachers and by their teams. Now, the math that you just purchased is not a retread. It was written post-Common Core era. It will not need as much revision. It is much more well-aligned right out of the gate. They're still going to need engagement. They're still going to need time to work on it, but the tool itself has more of the pieces, just sheerly by how it was created. So whenever people say it has Common Core on it, it's labeled that way, I always just want to give them sort of a buyer beware. Just remember, that's how publishers make their money, so we have to look at it with critical eyes. We have to be saying, what are the standards and what do my students need, and is it there or is it not? So finally, I want to go through the L2 matrix, which is sort of the underpinning of all data team work. And up the side, you have achievement of results. That's how students are performing, right? The bottom is a fancy way, understanding the antecedents of excellence is a fancy way of saying, know thy impact. Do we know what we're doing that's causing that outcome? So in the bummer corner, of course, the kids are not doing well and we don't know why. We're losing ground, and that's not a good place to be. Nobody likes it. It feels really out of control. On the flip side, we have the magic corner where kids are doing well and we don't necessarily know why. We call this corner lucky, and that really is what it is. We have a district we're working with right now that's passing students on the whole at above an 85% rate in ELA and math, and we are working with them solely to figure out why are they lucky, because lucky is not replicable. We can't guarantee it, we can't repeat it, and if push comes to shove and budgets get tight, we need to cut something, what if we cut the wrong thing? We don't know. And so they are working to get themselves out of that corner. Now, in the bottom corner, we pick specific strategies, we execute them well, but they don't work. It doesn't work for the students. Now we're learning. And I like to tell teachers, this is kind of the magic corner. This is the one place in education where we stop doing something. Because if we try a strategy and it doesn't work for kids, we need to stop doing it, and we need to try something different. Rather than just adding more and saying, try another, we're gonna say, okay, this one doesn't, it's out, now let's pick something else. And then there's the magic, where kids do well, we picked specific strategies, we executed them well, and now it's working, we're leading. The truth is, everybody wants to be leading. I want it, every teacher wants it, every single person I work with. But the challenge is we work with humans, we work with children. And so we are always, as data teams, gonna vacillate between leading and learning. But we have to know what we are doing that's causing that outcome, because that's something that we can change. When we don't know what it is that we're doing that's causing it, we're just gonna do everything we can think of. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard a teacher say that when they're talking about a student of concern, they're like, I have done everything I can think of. And when we're doing everything we can think of, we don't know which one of them are making a difference or not. So we have to keep doing everything we can think of. And that's not a sustainable place to be. It's also not a healthy place to be, and we don't want teachers there. So the work of data teams, by picking specific strategies and executing them well, pushes us along that antecedents of excellence line to become more clear about what we're doing and why, because the end game is to get little people who become big people across the podium. That's what we want, right? That's how we get those blocks. That we're not just hoping that they can see over the fence, we are ensuring that they can get over that fence and figuring out what exactly they need, because not every kid needs the same thing. And that's really the heart of the work of data teams. So as I wrap up, I just want to talk through kind of how education has worked. So in the old days, we were kind of that top one, where everybody had their own classroom, you had your own challenges, and you went back and ran it alone. You had no idea what was happening in the classroom next door. Doors were shut, it just wasn't a discussion. And then, many years ago, people said, you know what would be amazing? Let's give teachers time to come together and actually talk to each other, since they're doing the same job, right? And so teacher teams were coming together, but they were still going back and running their race alone, and they were largely isolated. And the information that they had was only as good as the retail from the last time they ran the race, right? And now we are working in this third row. We're saying, how do we actually work smarter? How do we utilize each other and our strengths and the information we can get to make a better plan? And so I want to just recommend that we all think of ourselves not as one of the mice or the race, but actually this guy. I call him you guy. I like to think of myself and all of us who support data teams as the spotter. We're running around at the bottom asking them what they need, saying, hey, you're leaning a little to the left, you're doing all right, do you need some water, what's happening? We are the pit crew of data teams, and that includes all of you guys. We're saying, what supports can we put in place to help them be more successful? So that's really the heart of data teams' work and what they are doing in that hour every week. And a fast and furious version of that. I know that success stories is something that people always like to hear. That's my email address. It's also on the handout that I gave you. I would be more than happy to share success stories with you at any time, both from this district or others. Just reach out to me. I'd also be happy to take you to any of the schools. They love to host people and show the work that they've been doing, because it's hard work and it's fun to be able to share that with others. But just due to time, I didn't bring that in today. So I think that's all of it. Questions? Yes.
I have to ask you at least one question.
Okay.
So when a teacher is focused on their students, they've identified their at-risk students, and they're applying these elements, and they're evaluating, and they realize that they need to reset then how is that shared with other teachers in the school, or do we share across the district, or, because we refer to them as data teams?
Yes, so good question. So when teachers are having those discussions, the sort of data team universe I just talked through, they're doing that collectively. None of that work is done alone. And so they're sitting at a table with peers, maybe one, maybe two, maybe five, if they're at one of the bigger schools, and they all have student work in front of them. So once they pick one of those columns of students and say, okay, we're gonna look at the kids who are far to go, everybody's pulling out the papers of their far to go students, setting the others aside, and they're analyzing work together. So they're really collaborating both around looking at student work and also talking about potential plans. So that is a shared process. But it's within the school. That's not done across schools. Well, actually, you have a couple who've teamed up because they have what we call singletons. Like we only have one fourth grade or one. So there are a few who've gone across schools, but largely within a school.
Thank you.
Of course, you're welcome. Yes.
I was wondering, how much of your guys' time or effort are you putting into, like, if you were to say kind of what you guys do in a day for teachers, would you say the biggest thing is the curriculum and adjusting it for teachers, coaching and mentoring through the data team's process when the teachers meet, or like the personal development and those sort of things? Like what would you say would be
That's
some
a
of the
great
top
question.
things?
I would say last year, we spent more time supporting curriculum and assessment on the whole because you were doing that alignment piece with ReadyGen. You were trying to dial in those pieces. So our emphasis was more there. I would say on the average day, it's a mix because every school that we go to, we basically sit down with the administrator and the coach and we say, let's look at your artifacts. Where are kids performing at? How are teams doing? Where do you think you need help? And sometimes they say, we need direct help with a certain team. You know, maybe they've got a new team member or a situation going on. Other times they'll say, I need help giving feedback to them. Can you help me review it and think about how to give teams that next step and be a resource to them? And so everything we do is customized to the school. So if you came with me and visited 2 schools in a day, you could see 2 totally different experiences. But all of the time that we spend here is working directly with either the data team or those who support the data team.
Jim?
So what artifacts are you looking at with those data teams? Tell me it's
Good
more than
question.
just SBAC.
Yeah, no, my gosh, no. No, what we're looking at when we look at artifacts is we're looking at the work of the teacher team. So we're looking at basically their instructional plan. And so that when they do that step 1 piece and they say, this is the standard, these are the lessons, we're gonna use all of those pieces. Sometimes we're helping administrators say, okay, how do we connect the dots? Like you heard them talking about it, you see it in their notes, now let's go see it in the classroom so that we can give teachers feedback on the things they're actually working on, right? So it's not just like, what do we happen to notice, but what did you say you wanted to work on? So we're looking at the things that teams generate, not student data. That's not our thing. The student data needs to be owned by the team because they're the ones who are in charge of that. They're the ones who have a chance of making a difference. We are just helping them with their plan to do that. So I can tell you confidently this year, I did not spend any time looking at SBAC with a data team.
So I guess I see a little bit of disconnect there in that the teachers are working directly with the students, doing formative working with the kids daily, and you're looking at their plan to address learning for students. I mean, I guess, how do you, in looking at that, know whether these plans are going to work for these students?
That's a great question. So I guess I'd say 2 things there. So one of them is we do work in classrooms from time to time. Like if a teacher asks for an observation, we will absolutely come into their classroom and support. But we are primarily supporting the support team. We're trying to help their coach and their administrator be better supports to them in the work because that's who needs to be doing it. My goal always for myself and for my team is to build capacity and leave. We're not trying to be Salem-Keizer employees forever. We want to help you with what your goals are right now and then go help another district do the same thing. And so it's always about capacity building for us. And how do we know the strategy is going to work? We don't. I mean, it's an inquiry-based process. We're saying, you know, you're going to pick a strategy, you're going to execute it well, and we want to help you do that. And then you're going to have to come back and say, did it work for kids or not? If we knew it would for sure work for kids, we would just be like, do that. But then we would be a scripted program. And then it wouldn't meet the needs of all kids because they're different.
So going back to the mice,
Yes.
You know how you referred to how like teachers and mice are up, they're able to see the plan, and you guys are there to help them if they fall. If you speak with a lot of teachers, which I'm sure you have,
I do.
I mean, we do as well since we're all here. There are some schools where it's working excellently. Like you go in there, you see their data teams, they're on it, they think it's excellent, and there's schools where you're seeing a lot of improvement.
Yeah.
There are also quite a few schools that you see or teachers who feel as if it's not working so well for them. And so what are you guys doing to help them? Because they're like, hey, we're about to fall.
Yeah.
And what are you guys doing to help those teachers so that way it's effective if they're going to have it?
Absolutely. Okay. So there's two parts to that. I think the first one is struggle. Sometimes people will ask me, why do some schools struggle? All schools should struggle. If we are not struggling, we are not engaging with the work. We're not changing anything. We're just doing the same thing. That's easier to do. It is harder to change, always. And so for me, when I hear people are like, it's perfect, I'm like, I'm skeptical of that, right? Like, productive struggle is part of the work. If we're not really grappling, then we always go back to the thing. If we do what we've always done, we're going to get what we've always gotten. But asking people to change their practice when kids are coming in the door in 15 minutes is a big ask, right? And so part of it is for us about getting out in front of it and helping teachers make a plan in advance, not 15 minutes, but weeks in advance, so that when that time comes and specific students do struggle, that's easier to make small changes. That's part of it. But the other part of it, I would tell you, if you kind of use the mice analogy back here, a lot of the schools have not had the same level of support.
Yeah.
Just sheerly by funding. So some of them look like this. They don't have a U guy. We've never been on site at their school. And so you can imagine what it might feel like to be the bottom mouse,
Yeah.
right? You're not seeing the whole picture and no one's helping you, or you feel that way. And so I think one of the things that you guys have wisely made the decision for this year was to figure out how to get some support to all schools so that we can clean up some of those pieces, because productive struggle is important and it's part of the process, but people can only live there so long. And then they're like, now I'm tapping out, I don't want to do this, it's not working for me, and it's not working for my kids. So I would tell you it has more to do with the quantity and frequency of support than anything else. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Paul, did you have something to
I
say?
do, but I'm sending mine to board leadership to get answered. Thank you. They don't need to be answered tonight. I understood Christie to say they should go to you guys.
So I think one of the dominant pluses in this is that teachers have accountability for what they're doing. So they've looked at data. They know what a student has already learned or needs to learn, or whether they're slipping through a crack or whether they're up here. This utilizes data that's collected. And for me, as a teacher, I need that because I want to know that. I want to know what they know. I want to know how we're moving forward, if we are. So I think that's one of the real strengths of this.
Thank you.
No other comment?
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you, Missy. Yeah.
All right, and then we have one final report from Lillian Govis, our Director of Community Relations, on our attendance campaign.
I'm bringing my colleague Emily Hicks up. Emily has been instrumental in helping do a lot of the groundwork on this campaign. So I can't say enough thanks for the hard work that she's done. Speaking of data, we have some really interesting and eye-opening data around student attendance. We have a new dashboard that really helps reflect in a different manner of when our students are and are not in school. And we are finding that 1 in 3 of our students is chronically absent. Chronically absent is missing 10% of the school year. So We know that no matter how hard our educators are working in the classroom, it's not going to have the impact we desire if the students aren't there. So how do we work to get our children into our schools so that we have the opportunity for success? So here we are. We've launched our Everyday 24J campaign to help address that issue. Per ODE, chronically absent students are those students who miss 10% or more of their school days. Missing just 2 days of school each month throughout the course of the school year results in the loss of 1 month, one entire month of instructional time. So it cuts our calendar by 1 month. Oregon as a whole struggles with this issue. So this is not something that is unique to Salem-Keizer schools. And it certainly has an impact on our graduation rates. Students who regularly attend school are 172% more likely to graduate. And it's not even just attendance. Tardiness plays a big part in it. If students are tardy every day by 15 minutes, they lose 2 weeks of instructional time a year. And we're seeing that, especially with our parents who have multiple children. It's difficult for them to drop them all off at their schools on time, or maybe they're intentionally trying to miss the traffic at the schools. Or they're checking them out 15 minutes early to miss the traffic at the schools, and there's a real impact there. 50% of those kids who miss 2 to 4 days in September will miss an entire month. They'll continue that pattern throughout the school year. And those kids who miss 20 days of school have a 20% chance of graduating. One of the pieces of data that I didn't include on here, but it's one of the most staggering ones. If kids miss 2 days of school a year, beginning in kindergarten, continue that path through middle school, by the end of their middle school careers, they will have lost an entire year of instruction. So clearly this is something that we need to work on and work hard, and it's not something that we can work on alone. We have addressed this in a way different than truancy. Truancy is all about unexcused absence and compliance, and it's legal and administrative solutions, and it's the police dealing with it. But we want to deal with it in a more holistic manner where we count all of those absences, figure out what's causing them, and then use a community-based positive strategy to fix it. So here in Salem-Keizer, 1 in 3 of our students are chronically absent. 40% of those students who identify as Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander are chronically absent. 39% of students who identify as American Indian or Alaska Native are chronically absent. 31% of our students who are Hispanic or Latino are chronically absent. Same with our economically disadvantaged students. But one of the pieces that's really interesting is that it's not, it's not just one segment of the population. Our students who are talented and gifted, 25% of those students also are chronically absent. And so we see after, through the middle school years and through high school, that the number grows and grows until eventually we get to 54% of our seniors who are chronically absent. So what do? Well, we sat down with our leaders in Salem-Keizer schools to find out firsthand from real educators what's going on in our schools and the battles that they're facing. We want to engage our students and our parents, recognize and appreciate that improved attendance, monitor that with our new dashboard that is just exceptional, provide personalized early outreach, and together develop a programmatic response to those barriers. On June 21st, all of the district leadership came together to perform a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. From there, we overlaid the equity lens on top of those results to find out how we were ensuring that we were achieving positive results for all students. And then we took that information and went to the community. So in July, we had a packed house meeting at SCEF, and we were thrilled with the turnout that we had there. Salem-Keizer Coalition for Equality was there, Ask ESP, elected officials, business leaders, health industry professionals, nonprofits, and more, representing all facets of this community, so that we could have a real, genuine talk with them about our needs. We facilitated that with our principals, again, putting those real educators into groups with the community members to dissect where our issues are, where those obstacles are, how we could develop solutions, and again, bringing in the equity lens to ensure that we were doing it in a holistic and thoughtful way. From there, we've developed subcommittees that are working on what the campaign launch looks like. We know that September is a big month for us. If we can get those kids in school in September, they have a better chance for success throughout the school year. So how do we make a big splash in September? We also have our benchmark committee. So what does success look like? Maybe you have a student who has significant absences throughout the year, and success still is chronically absent for that student the following year, but it's drastically reduced. And then how do we celebrate the end of the year? What does that look like? On August 16th, we met with the office managers, and if you want to get the pulse of a school, the office managers are the place to go, so that they could help be the messengers of this campaign when families come to register their students for school, when they're having those daily interactions, when they're the ones who are checking in those students who are tardy. And then we're doing our campaign public launch on September 4th at Auburn Elementary. On that day, they have a community partner in Costco who's coming in and providing backpacks and hot dogs for their families to help them get acquainted with the school. But this is not by accident, this is by design. We are seeing that those schools in the North Salem feeder pattern have the most significant impacts in terms of chronic absenteeism. And so by hosting it at Auburn Elementary, we are working on that North Salem feeder system to make sure that they are included in that launch. We want to change the tone of those absence communications. We're working with our schools to provide them toolkits so that when students are chronically absent, what do the letters say? Is it that punitive letter for truancy, or is it a letter that says that we miss you and we value you and we want you back? We're working with our community outreach coordinators to make sure that we are all going from the same playbook. We want to raise awareness. We know, like I said, this is not something that's Salem-Keizer's problem alone. We need to work with our medical providers so that they understand that when they're writing notes for students to be out of school, that that is one of the contributing factors. So how do we work to make sure that our students are healthy, that maybe their appointments are made at such a time that it doesn't impact the school day? And so how do we incentivize and recognize that growth? Again, that benchmark team will be working on that. And then working with our community partners to assist in outreach. We have some grant dollars to assist our work, but we're partnering closely with Salem-Keizer Coalition for Equality, who is also partnering with Kaiser Permanente. They have a whole separate grant that they're working on to address, especially in that North Salem feeder system, of reaching out to families and making school more accessible. We'll monitor their attendance, we'll celebrate their success, and we'll see about removing those barriers. Again, Salem-Keizer Coalition for Equality has been great, but we all know that if you want to amplify a message in this community, working with SCEF is a great thing to do. Karina has been incredibly generous with us. We will be a part of the Back to School Festival. We'll be a part of the Crystal Apple Awards. So this will be a message that will continue to resonate throughout the school year and not give anyone a chance to forget about us. And if you've met me, I think that you may believe that I won't let that happen. And then we will finally work on influencing those behaviors. As you can see, we've got our logo there. Each of our board members got their fancy schmancy button, thanks to our new principal, Magda, who made these for y'all tonight. But we are working on making more than 1,000 of those for an upcoming event. So it is something that we will make sure that regardless of where you are, we will find you and we will remind you that every day, 24J, be there. So what does success look like? Success looks like shared accountability, those community partners coming forward and helping us incentivize attendance, reduction in chronic absenteeism, improved relationships, having families trust us and know that we're here and we're a safe space for them. Regardless of where you're from, school is safe, and we'll continue to be that safe space for all of our families. It's an architecture for academic success. It's getting those children in front of their teachers more regularly so the teachers can do that amazing work that they're doing each and every day. It's an improved graduation rate. We know that our graduation rate could use some help. And just by having those children in school, we should be able to make a direct correlation between attendance and an improvement in the graduation rate. And finally, especially for those talented and gifted students, it means greater employability. We are working on our vision to prepare all of our students for a successful life after graduation. It's college, it's career. Either way, you have to show up for those so you can be successful. So in a nutshell, that is what our attendance campaign looks like. I invite you all to share your ideas with me, more community partners. There is space for everyone in this campaign. We have been really touched by the number of people who hear about it. A parent heard about it in the newsletter and they called, they want to be a part of it. Someone saw something in the newspaper, they want to be a part of it. And so that's really how a grassroots successful campaign ignites and makes real and significant change. I will take any questions that you have.
Marty?
I don't really have a question, I have a comment. You know, I have a 19-year-old that was recently looking for work, so he's not quite working full-time, so my husband's always asking questions whenever he sees a help wanted sign. And for one of the employers, the biggest problem was getting people to actually show up for work, to show up. And not be sick all the time or whatever, just to show up. And it's kind of like the habits they're creating here in school, they're going to carry with them potentially for life in their work life. And it's going to be a big, you know, whether they're successful or not, could be just based on showing up for school.
Absolutely.
Jim?
So going back to your slide, the plan, engaging students, what'd you do to engage students?
Well, we don't have them yet.
Because I got to be honest with you, I think this is great, but unless you find out why kids aren't in school from the kids, you're not going to do anything about it. Because I can tell you right now, my son's a senior in high school, and most of his friends would tell me they don't go to school because they're bored. And they've got all the credits they need. They need one class to graduate, and we're done. I don't need to go to school. I need to go to that one class. As long as I pass that class and get a C in the rest, I can play sports. I can do all the stuff I want to do. I mean, we really need to go ask the students. Community members are great. They want kids in school. But the real person you got to go ask is a student. Why aren't you in school? Why aren't you engaged? And I can tell you, 54% of the seniors, this is not a scientific poll, but my son's a senior this year. It's because they're bored. They need one class to graduate, and that's the only reason they're in school, or they're going to play football. And they got to have enough attendance to make sure they can play football. We need to really go ask the kids, why aren't you here? Now, if it's a medical reason, that's totally different. Somebody who's sick, doesn't have the health, and we don't want sick kids in our school. But I really think we need to address our system of our kids. 54% of our seniors, I'm betting over half of those are because they're bored. And that's just talking to my son and his friends. And from me being a senior, I remember back going, I just need this one class to graduate. I've already been accepted to Oregon State University. I was bored. We need to address that problem within our schools. And I really encourage you, I like the idea, but we gotta reach out to students.
Absolutely, and we have some students from the Turnaround Awards that were done in the spring to reach out to and follow up with, who had those really compelling stories of not going to school and what brought them back. One of the other discussions that we had with our high school level director is how do we structure our high school class schedule so that it promotes attendance.
I think it's important too, and this is more on the elementary where things start. I think we need to clearly let parents know when they're just stuck. They've talked to their child, they've encouraged him to do this and that. Sometimes they've bribed him to do this and that. It's not working. So who can they call in elementary school? And who will be available to help them? I'd like them to ask that or answer that as well. By the way, I thought that was a nice presentation. You hit lots of points. I liked it. Any other questions? I think that finishes our reports for this evening. Board meeting, our next board meeting is Tuesday, August 21. That's for the board. And that'll be a work session for us starting at 3 p.m. So be sure you have that on your calendar. As far as public comment, as you know, there's 2 sheets out there, and one is for comments on what's on the agenda, and the other one is for comments for anything you wish that's not in the agenda. So no one signed up this evening for comments, so if you have something to say, we will listen to you. Doesn't look like anyone does, so we'll skip that this evening. Board activity reports. We like to talk each meeting about where we've been and what we've done to encourage students or to meet students or be involved. Any board comments? Marty?
So I was able to go to the summer graduation, and man, it was a lot nicer this year. Last year it was, 107 degrees, and we thought we were going to die on the stage, and it was a lot cooler. It was really great to see these kids that decided they were going to reach their goal one way or the other, and I was just very proud of them.
Paul?
I just wanted to comment on one agenda item, and that was the departure of Kelly Carlisle from the district, and to thank him for all of his service and efforts on behalf of the district and the district students.
Second.
Third.
Looks like you got a good round of applause, Kelly. Congratulations. Well, I'll tell you what I did this last week is I worked with my grandson, and he likes to do sports, and he had an unfortunate experience with a class that he didn't like and didn't attend regularly, and his grade in that class showed it. So it was up to me and his mother to look around the district and say, what do you do now? He's going to be short of credits if he doesn't make that up. And so I can share with you, when that happens in a school district, call the principal and say, what's available to my child? He didn't do as he should have done this last term, and he's going to be partially short of credits. What can I do? And I found out that there is classes at no cost that the child can take. They're held at North Salem, and they can go to North Salem daily until they finish that amount of time and instruction and taken a test so they can pass that one that they should have passed the first time. So I'm sure I'm not the only one that's been in that fix before. But I found out there are ways to do that. And if they get in there and do it, then their availability for playing sports is all right. And it's a much pleasanter time at home if they've made up that credit. So just so you know what direction you can take when you've been somewhat unsuccessful with a middle schooler that doesn't really realize that grades and going to school always matters. Okay, nothing there.
Want me to jump in with just a couple last things?
Yes, will you?
All right.
Superintendent's report. I think that would be you.
Okay, all right. So I know high on our mind are any sex abuse cases that we've had in the past. And so we started this week with leadership to do a training called Darkness to Light. And we had Liberty House come help facilitate that training. So all district leaders have been facilitated. And it's a really good training if you have a chance to see it. At some point, it's good, hard topic, but good training. And then we welcomed our office managers last week back to work. And we have 3 high schools listed, right, Lillian, as the top 50 high schools in the U.S., Sprague, South, and West. Thank you. So that will be coming out in a press release soon. Oh, it's out. Okay, it's out. While we've been meeting, she got the press release out. And then I know we're going to see Kelly again because we're going to see him next week. But if you think about some of the items on the strategic plan, our equity work, our equal opportunity schools work, our career technical education, our AVID work, you've been here 10 years, and a lot of that started with you, Kelly. So there was a time when I think equity was not a great word, and people, even I remember conversations of they didn't want to say the equity word out loud in a policy, if you can imagine that. And Kelly helped move that along. So I think your footprint and your leadership has been well imprinted on us, but mostly for our kids. So thank you, and we'll see you next week and beyond, but you've really made a big difference.
I agree. Kelly was one of the first friends I had in the district. And we went out ringing doorbells and knocking on doors together. And I always tease him about that. It kind of turned out to be a disaster. When I hit the top step and went bang on the first front porch we went to. And Kelly was there to pick me up. So I think that's a good compliment to you, Kelly. Okay, we're adjourned this evening, and thank you so much for coming. It does matter. It matters to your child. Thank you.